everything that we just listed before will now be done. Yeah, that's not working very well. Okay, let me help you with that. Some things that you want to think about after you pass away. These are things that should you know, do you know, are you aware of? Do you know how to run a final credit report after somebody passes away, which is different than running your own regular credit report when you are alive, by the way. Do you know how to properly inform them of being deceased? That includes being a deceased spouse or being the last spouse to die on a joint account. Those are two different notifications to the credit agency. Those are two different letters worded entirely different, and your credit report is marked differently based on how the succession of passing away dies. Do you know how to handle identity theft if the deceased had their identity stolen? You have a 1 in 14 chance of having your ID stolen after death. The very prominent group of people that have those stolen are people that are middle-aged because they are active, their credit is moving. So if they pass away and some things weren't done, it's really easy like that for you to pick up information off the internet, and there goes your ID stolen, credit cards up, collection agencies are calling you. Even though you are not legally responsible, the collection agency, as Larry said, are persistent. They're very persistent. The other group of people that have a prominent high identity theft are seniors, generally men who've passed away, whose widows did not close down the estate at all. They left their husband's name on everything. They've never been Mrs. Jane Smith. They have always been Mr. John Smith, and they haven't had anything in their name. So when things come in the mail, when credit card applications come, when anything come with their deceased husband's name on it, they don't have a thought process that there's a potential problem because they are used to seeing it, and they did not remove his name from anything. They left utilities and everything in his name. So they're real easy to steal that identity from there. They've got excellent credit. They've got a low fingerprint on the web presence, so they're real easy to pick up and just run with them. And then you have these poor widow ladies who get these phone calls all the time about calling for credits, and it's overwhelming to those poor ladies. Do you know what else could happen that you'll need to take care of, and do you really know how long it's going to take? Those are things to think about. These are very common mistakes that I made, that people make, that really come back to haunt you. Most families assume that when you cancel the credit cards and the utilities and the service workers, it's the first thing you do. Most families assume that the hospital will let the doctors and providers know about the death, meaning the mortuary will let the hospital know, and it will go down from there. Most families assume that because your wills and trusts are completed, everything is done, and the attorney will handle these items that we are talking about today. And most families think that because the estate is small, there isn't a lot of work to be done. None of these are true statements, and all of them are things that every single person has a thought process of. I was one of them. Here are the first things you want to do. You want to call all 3 credit agencies and put a fraud alert on the Social Security number. You can pick one credit agency and they will tell you we'll call the other 2. That's like Social Security talking to us. There are billions of us and billions of people in Social Security. They don't communicate. It's not like me being able to pick up the phone and calling Larry and saying something. You're talking about these 2 monster agencies trying to talk to each other. So you do want to take the time and the effort and wait on hold forever, but you do want to call all 3 of them and put the alert on the Social Security number. That's the very first thing to do. You do want to run credit reports from all 3 agencies. Everybody reports things differently, so all 3 credit agencies will have different information on you. Again, it's time consuming, but it's very important because one agency will have something that might slip through, another one doesn't. You do want to keep the primary credit card open. And the reason is, most of us have one credit card that we use on a regular basis. We charge it, we pay it off, we charge it, we pay it off. In that instance, when they've prepaid a whole bunch of things and they've passed away, if you leave that credit card open right here, and you call the credit card company and say they're deceased, but nothing else will be put on the card, but we want to keep the card open so that money can be credited back, it is much easier than closing down this one single credit card, than having to go back to the people's subscription and say, we want to cancel the subscription, we'd like a refund. If they credit it back to the card, it takes about 3 days. If you've canceled the credit card, the company over here requires a check to be cut and certain paperwork to be filled out almost every time. And guess who they cut the check back to? The deceased. Guess what you cannot do with that check? Cash it. So it is really important to leave the credit card open so that those credit cards can get credited back to the credit card, and you want to keep the deceased driver's license with you. You want to punch a hole in the driver's license and punch a hole in the passport. The reason being, if you keep the driver's license and you notify MVD and let them know that they're deceased, is all you're going to have to do is they'll punch a hole in the number. They don't take it back, they don't want it back, just like the passport company doesn't want the passport back. But if you punch a hole through the number on the driver's license or on the passport, that makes it non-usable, and they can't reissue that unless somebody actually walks in with paperwork completed and an ID and everything. So it helps protect against that ID theft that we were talking about earlier. MVD doesn't want that driver's license back. The passport does not want that passport back. However, if you are doing things like saying, credit this back, I'm the trustee, I'm the personal representative, I am the surviving spouse, they're going to want a copy of your driver's license and the deceased driver's license. That's why you want to keep them. So for reference points from behind the scenes for them, it goes much faster with those things. You also, one of the very first things you do is you want to get information and all the paperwork together for the insurance companies. They are, like in Larry's case, he was talking about the long-term care. We've come across people who think that they have a life insurance policy and they've held on to it and held on to it. Somebody passes away and they have this policy and they fill out the paperwork, and guess what? It was not a life insurance policy, it was a long-term care policy. So if you can collect all of that paperwork on the front end and get it together, it takes 6 to 8 months for everything to get processed. It really is a long time, primarily because when you are asking for information, you have to go back to the hospital and back to the doctor's office. And they don't speak to each other either, I hate to say it, but they're wanting a detailed bill over here from the billing company, and they're wanting a detailed doctor thing over here from the doctor's office, which guess what? They're both the same company, but this department doesn't talk to this department, so you have to request things twice. Nobody knows what's going on, so it's a long process every single time. There's no way to streamline it, unfortunately. Now here are things you don't want to do. You don't want to cancel the deceased phone right away. That sounds simple. That sounds stupid, I understand. However, let me give you an example. Let's say we had, for example, we had a client that was just down the street. He lived by himself. He had a hard line and a cell phone. Well, when he passed away, because his kids didn't live in town and the people who weren't here in town had to take care of it, the first thing they did was cancel the phone. There is nobody at the house. Why do we need the phone? There's nobody at the house. Why do we need cable? Well, two problems with that. First off, everybody who was trying to get a hold of him only had his hardline number. He didn't use his cell phone the way we do now. This is the only phone I possess now. I don't even have a home phone. So for me to give out this number is nothing. But for the seniors who don't have a cell phone, who have a hard line, that's the only way people know how to get in touch with them. You cancel that phone and guess what? The doctor's office can't get in touch with them, the hospital can't, the mortuary can't, nobody can get in touch with that deceased person at the house and leave messages. So it's important just to leave the line open. It's not that you have to leave all the things that just keep voicemail with it or an answering machine and just the plain line. The same thing with the cable. It's fine to cancel the cable, but you have to take the cable box back. No company recognizes a cancellation of the cable until that box is physically back in their possession with a copy of the death certificate. And even though you canceled it and you didn't take the box back, they're still gonna bill you for that, and they will still send you to collections, and they will still call and harass you for payment of that bill and box, just because you didn't take the box back. Don't cancel the primary credit card, we talked about that. I always say don't tell anybody about the death that doesn't need to know right away. That includes putting an obituary in the newspaper. You've all heard people who sit and go through the obituaries on Sunday, and then they might say, I'm going to use Lou as an example. We'll just say, I don't know this, but we'll pick on Lou and hopefully he'll be nice and not take it personally. Let's say Lou's father passed away, and Lou immediately put in the newspaper an obituary, and he listed all of the kids and where they lived and all the grandkids and where they lived. So now you have somebody who's sitting there on Sunday going through the obituaries. They're going to pick up the phone, they're going to call Lou and say, this is your grandson so-and-so, I'm in Mexico, please send money. Well, if you don't put all that information in there, you're going to limit the number of people that, one, get information, two, that can find information about you, because the more information you put in the obituary, the more places they can go on the internet to find information to steal an ID. And you're going to get people who really are going to scam you for money. The widows, the senior ladies that are widows fall for that every time, unfortunately. And then they're out $500 or $1,000 and there's no way to get it back. So it's very important to keep that information as minimal as possible until somebody really needs it or until somebody really needs to know.
Tisha, the other thing, and this is where I thought you were going, is that if you have that information in the newspaper, which is so-and-so died, no surviving spouse, typically it says she predeceased.
Right.
There's a child in Massachusetts, there's a child in Texas, and there's a child in California. What is that telling somebody reading the obituary?
There's nobody at the house.
Nobody home.
Yes, there's nobody at the house.
Yeah.
That's right. And they do, unfortunately, they do that. I don't have the mind of a criminal, so sometimes I have a hard roundabout to come on where I could help people. And it's not like I know criminals and can walk up and say, how would you do this if you were going to steal this or find this? I don't know how to do it. But I hear of those kind of things happening all the time. We always say, for the kids that are out of town, if they do put it in, the first thing we say is, go put new locks on the house, because you have no idea who has keys to the house. You have no idea who has an alarm code. Change locks, change the alarm code. Let the alarm company know that nobody lives here. The alarm is still active, so if it goes off, there really is a problem. It's very important to do that in the grand scheme of things. And when we go through and talk with clients, we always ask them, who has keys to the house? Do you know who has keys to the house? If one spouse died and the other spouse is going into an assisted living, we tell them, who did you give keys to? If they don't remember, even though the house is still there and it's empty and the spouse is still alive into the nursing home, we always say change the locks, change the alarm code. It just protects what's in there from that perspective. Don't make any major decisions without consulting a professional. That's anything. That's with your estate, that's with your money, that's with what to do with extra papers, how to sell the stuff correctly, anything like that. It is much easier to sit down and spend a couple of hours with a professional and get feedback and some information on how to do it than it is to do it on your own and try and clean up. The two estate attorneys can attest to this. If you don't pay for it up front, you'll pay doubly for it on the back end every time. It's no different when somebody's dying and you're trying to take care of the house and wrapping up the final affairs for the estate. The other thing is you want to have, if possible, mail forwarded to a third party. Volume of mail always increases after death. And I have no idea how bulk mail, junk mail works on the back end, but the moment somebody dies and that goes into the system, every single junk mail back here who buys the lists gets the names of deceased person and starts sending mail. I will tell you, it was probably 10 months or so after my dad died when I got this rush of mail for people wanting to sell me or sell my dad. Buy burial insurance, buy funeral insurance, buy a plot. We can cremate you for this much if you buy now. Please, really? my dad's already deceased, he's already been cremated, I don't think you're gonna help me much. We have, for our clients, we have a P.O. box, and we recommend them to forward the things to our P.O. box, because if they're in California and Michigan and Minnesota, where are you gonna have the mail sent to and who's taking care of it? So if they're here in town, we just say have the mail forwarded to us. As we get checks in, we'll send them to you. As we get things in that need to be done, we'll handle them. We'll remove them from junk mail list, credit card applications, all that kind of thing. But it does increase, you do need to know that. Every time it increases. This is how you can help your family. The one thing that everybody in here has in common is we are all going to die. And we are going to leave somebody behind that has to wrap up what our life was and what our footprint was. So the better you can plan ahead, just like in estate planning, the better off you're going to leave your family. If I died today, I shudder to think that my 18-year-old son would have to close my estate. He can't even balance his own checkbook yet. Clearly, he would not know what to do for me. But I also, as a parent, the last thing I want to do is leave a mess for my kids. That's the very last thing I want to do. So planning ahead, it's not about us, it's about those of us that are left after you pass away. So it's very important to plan ahead. You want to make sure that your family knows where your documents are. You want to make sure they know where's the bank with the safety deposit box, what is the combination of the safe, or who has the combination to the safe that we can call to get in it. Who's the estate planning attorney, where do we call them? We always recommend, we've got a magnet, we say just stick this on the safe and call us, because a lot of our clients that have a deceased spouse will leave us that information because they don't want their kids to know yet where it is. They don't want their kids to know the combination of the safe or where the safety deposit box is, so we just made up little magnets and say stick this to the safe, so when you die, they call us and we have all that information for them. So it's very important for them to know where everything's at. You want to make sure that your family knows who to call first. You don't necessarily, you do want to call the attorney if they had some estate plan, you do want to call the financial advisor if they had money, but after that, most people don't know who to call. So you want to make sure we need the couple down the street, you need to call them because when we're not here, they pick up our paper and get our mail and those kind of things. So you just want to make a real brief list of who calls, who gets called, and after death, who calls. That's a really important thing. And as I said, you want to have our information available, so we're here to answer questions from that aspect. I can tell you now, this service that we provide you don't need. You can do this. Everybody in this room is capable of doing everything that we do. But after your loved one has passed away, you are not necessarily in the best frame of mind. You're not necessarily thinking clearly. You don't necessarily want to make a phone call and wait on hold for 45 minutes. It takes 3 times longer than what you think it takes every time. You write letters, you have to go do things. You can do that, but in that frame of mind, is that the best way you want to spend your time? Or do you really just want to be able to sit back, grieve, talk to the counselor, spend time with family? You don't necessarily want to go through those 14 banker boxes, so we'll go through them and pull out personal stuff. Then you can sit and go through personal information. We've had clients that the attorneys will call us and say, we need this, and we always say, the client's going through them. Well, in our world, we have boxes to go through. I'm not really interested in what's in the box. I'm only interested in getting through it and getting what our attorneys are calling and asking us for. I'm not interested in personal letters or pictures. I'm interested in giving those back to you so that you can sit and read the letters and look at the pictures and reminisce about your loved one without having to do all of that work from there. We do have packages available that takes the 3 different sections, the more work, the more time. We are a flat fee-based company. We do have initial assessments, which we'll sit down and spend a couple of hours with you. We have a 19-page checklist that we'll go through with you to kind of give you an idea what you need to take care of, how long it's really going to take, things you might not have thought about, places where IDs can get stolen or money can get taken that you hadn't thought about before. We do have that initial consultation for $2.99. From that point, we do have 3 separate packages, or we can customize it. You might want to do some things and have us do some things, so it all depends on how much work that you'd like to have done, or how many things you didn't realize you were going to have to take care of. As in Larry's case, the same with us, people like flat fee. They like to know what they're paying up front and not get billed every month or every 2 weeks for stuff that they didn't know and having to explain. So that's why we set up that flat fee basis the way it was. Here's our contact information. We have cards and brochures over there for any information. I talked about primarily afterwards. We do have a lot of clients who will have the spouse that passed away and the other spouse that needs help because they're in the nursing home. So we do have packages and availability to help people. It's called Before It Becomes After, to where if you're moving your parents or your dad passed away and you're moving your mother into a nursing home, what you're looking to take care of are things that you physically see. We're not interested in what you can physically see. We're interested in the paper and the footprint they have, and how can we minimize the work that you're going to have to do after they pass away. It is much easier to get answers from people when they are still living versus trying to guess after they pass away when they are not around to answer your questions. So if we can get people, just like in estate planning, if we can get them on the front end, it really is a lot easier and a lot faster and a lot better for you, because then it does give you an idea of what things need to be done from there. So that's kind of the overview. Are there any questions for that?
I've got a couple real quick.
Yeah.
Are you guys, is your practice primarily here in Arizona, or do you handle things for people who die elsewhere?
Well, most of our estates are here, most of our clients are not here. Most of our clients live in California or wherever, but the estate is usually here. Right now we're in the process of looking at offices in Minnesota and Texas, and then we have 3 others that are kind of on the back burner.
Okay.
There's still a lot of work we can do, though, over through the internet, via email, on the phone, because a lot of it is just paperwork to do and calls to make. Unless we physically have to go through the house, we can work with just about any estate anywhere.
Okay. And what about number of clients who have a digital footprint? Are you equipped, or have you started doing those types of things?
Yes.
Closing Facebook accounts, picture services.
Yes.
Number of things.
We have a list of all those places that we all have fingerprints on now, and I'm probably the worst of everybody, mainly because of the business, but all over the place we've got, I couldn't even tell you, I think we have 97 digital places that you can actually be in reality. We also have 12 sites that we look for missing money, and we also have a hard asset search, which means we'll look for tax returns, we'll look for things like lease, oil and gas, those kinds of things that you might not know. The only reason we look for that is we found some, my dad had some in Oklahoma that were years and years and years old, and who knew? So I now own lease, gas and mineral and oil land in the middle of Oklahoma. So I have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but I own it. So we do take care of those things as well.
Thank you very much. Did anybody else have any other questions? Any questions online? Or?
I know that in the part of our practice, it's called probate or estate administration. If there's a good trust and there's no probate, we do find that there's a lot of children of deceased parents who really don't know a lot about what mom and dad own. It becomes a real scavenger hunt.
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time, counseling our clients to create these kinds of lists, like you mentioned. If you own it, list it. If you've lent it to somebody, list it. If you have something that somebody lent you, list it.
Yeah.
If you have pets, list them. Because not everybody knows who your pets are. If you die and you have 5 cats and we only know about 2 of them, three of them are going to have some problems.
Yes, they are.
So we really want people to be really comprehensive in terms of creating lists, so that it makes it relatively easy to step in and try to, take over as you've been talking about.
Yes.
All right.
Well, thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Well, thank you for coming tonight. It is probably about the first inning, so enjoy your evening. Let's hope the Diamondbacks win, and we'll be able to watch them this weekend again. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
You're
much.
very welcome.
I know.
Oh, yeah, get those.